This is the Literary License Podcast with your hosts, Vicky Ray, John Wilson, and Keith Shorgo. Discussing book to screen and everything in between. Coming at you from the UK and USA.
They keep it real.
There are 3 witches on the school. They are the teachers and the glutons. I love the races. And you go to the school and frog and bite. Wage. The wage met Freight's reach. There are 1 wage, all in the Marcos Islands reach. She's wage. And Morgan. There are a school with 3 wages. The wage.
Then shall you be banished from this plantation's liberties.
on thy hands! It is you! It is you!
Have you taught?
The devil is in thee, and hath had thee. You have smeared of his sin. You reek of evil. You have made a covenant with brother. You bewitched thy brother, proud slut.
Hello, welcome to the Literary License Podcast in the month of It Must Be the Season of the Witch. Today we'll be discussing the 1977 Dario Argento film, Suspiria, and the Robert Eggers film, The Witch, in 2015. And with us today, we have our normal co-host, John Wilson.
Hello, folks.
And Vicky, unfortunately, is not with us because she's doing family things. Because, yes, she has a family, believe it or not. Someone did marry her.
A coven.
And we also have with us today esteemed cartoonist, Rob Kirby, who is the author and illustrator of Curbside, A Strange Looking Exile, and Boy Trouble. How are you today, Rob?
I am very well in this season of The Witch. I'm feeling very witchy rather than witchy, so.
Getting witchy with it.
Yeah, getting witchy. Yeah.
And we also have the author of Brothers of Blood, Tristan Drew Rogers, who's also with us today. Hello, Tristan.
Howdy. What's going on, y'all?
And so what we like to do before we go into our podcast is discuss what we've currently been up to. So, John, what have you been up to?
Well, in my spare time when I'm not casting spells or building voodoo dolls, I am watching Netflix. I just powered through The Haunted Hill House, which I was talking to you guys briefly about. It's one of those shows that I think they do a good job. Unfortunately, they are not calling it based on the acclaimed novelist Shirley Jackson. They're just calling it Haunted Hill House. I think they did a really good job with this season. I powered through it fairly quickly. So this is a new adaptation. So it's definitely something to watch. So I think it's brilliantly written and very cinematically macabre, I would call it.
And what about yourself, Rob? What have you been up to?
Well, tonight, continuing the Shirley Jackson thread that John started, I'm going to see the theatrical production of The Haunting of Hill House, and it is going to be performed at the J.J. Hill House, the famous J.J. Hill House in St. Paul, Minnesota, where I live. It's a big, beautiful old house, and they're doing this adaptation, which has not been done for quite some time here, although I heard in London about in 2015, it was performed and it did really well. I did some internet research. So I'm very excited about that. In between, like in my regular life, I'm getting ready to move and doing all this other stuff. So it's kind of crazy, but I'm very much looking forward to talking about Suspiria and very much looking forward to seeing the play tonight. So.
What about yourself, Tristan?
Well, I recently got married and learned that we were having a baby, but yeah, that's a whole lot of things. But to bring back,
which takes up all time right there.
So much. But to bring back to the Shirley thing, I'm an episode left for the Hill House. So please, nobody tell me what's going to happen because I can tell it's not like the book at all. So I actually had to dig around a little bit to even learn it had anything to do with Shirley Jackson, which is interesting that they would do it like that. But other than that, I just watched the movie right before. I watched Suspiria right before this little podcast, so I'm a little fresh. So I'm ready to go.
And myself, I've been currently watching a lot of Shudder. We now have Shudder down as one of our sponsors. So I've been really keen on them, and I have to sit there and say I've been addicted to that. I've actually let Netflix slide a little bit. So, and besides that, I'm playing a lot of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and I've also been...
How is that?
Oh, it's really good, actually. I'm really enjoying it.
I've heard.
Unfortunately, it's Christmas time, and every other year within an Xbox or PlayStation, all the great games come out every 2 years, and all the great games are coming out now. So, but I decided to, binge them one game at a time, and when I finish that, I will purchase the next one, so that way I will not have to take out a second mortgage. So, but besides that, I've been reading. I just finished the new Graham Masterson's book that they've asked me to review, which is very good. I'll be posting that review up later. And just watching films and living life, living la vida loca, I guess. So the first one we're going to discuss at the moment is going to be Suspiria, the 1977 classic directed by Dario Argento. The important thing to know about Dario Argento is this came right after his Animal trilogy, which was Cat o' Nine Tails, Four Flies on Velvet, and Bird of the Crystal Plumage. And this was his Giallo film phase, which he actually would pinnacleize this with his Profumo Rosso, or the American production of Deep Red. While he met his wife, Daria Nicolodi. And with Daria Nicolodi came up with this idea of witches. And Dario came on board with this. And Daria Nicolodi is an interesting choice because Daria and Dario was kind of this love-hate relationship. Even though they did get married and they did have a couple of kids, which everyone would probably know who Daria Argento is at the moment, if anyone's watching the news lately. That is the daughter of Dario and Daria. But at the beginning of their relationship, it was very, very great, and they came out with Suspiria. Unfortunately, as their relationship deteriorated, if you're familiar with Dario Argento films, you'll notice that Daria Nicolodi starts dying very horrible deaths, because what he would do is you kill her more and more graphically, the worse the relationship became. So, and he also did the same thing with his daughter Asia when he put her in films.
Jeez. So. That's dark.
Suspiria is the first of the Three Mothers trilogy, the first one being, of course, Suspiria, and then Inferno came out in 1980, and then we got The Mother of Tears, which came out in 2007, which we will go into. It's a travesty of a film. That's all I can say about Mothers of Tears, but Inferno is quite good. Another thing that makes it Suspiria is that he just came off Profumo Rosso working with Goblin, who actually did the soundtrack for Profumo Rosso, and Goblin would come on board to do Suspiria, which would help Suspiria become the instant classic that it became. So, Rob, do you got anything you'd like to add about the making of Suspiria?
Yeah, well, I'm of a certain age, and I'm lucky enough to have seen in theaters when it came out. I was a kid. My sister and her then boyfriend took me to a downtown Detroit theater. We saw it was the second part of a double bill. Back in the 70s, there were double bills. You would go and see sometimes 3 movies. It was Damien Omen 2 with the backup feature, Suspiria, and I had never seen anything like that before in my life. I didn't know anything about Italian horror films or Dario Argento. It terrified me, but I absolutely loved it. And for years, my sister Barb and I thought it was just like this weird kind of movie that we somehow caught. We'd never see it again. I just didn't. It wasn't until many years later that I realized, oh, this is a classic film and it's highly regarded. And it actually I think in the early aughts, late 90s, early aughts, I started watching more of his films, and I really got into Italian horror films too, Fulci and Mario Bava, even though I'd seen probably a few Mario Bava things as a kid, like Black Sunday. And so it's a whole genre that Suspiria introduced me to. Everything about it, I didn't know anything about, like, why is everything dubbed so strange? Why is there all this dead air? All these odd things. Why is that? Why are these murders so brutal and sadistic? It just opened up a whole world for me, and I was happy to watch it again to discuss today. I watched it for like the dozenth time a couple days ago, just so it would be fresh, even though I know it really well.
The interesting thing you say about the dubbing is with Dario Argento films is when you're on the film set, everyone says their lines in their own native language, and he uses a multi-European cast. So if you're a German actor, you're speaking your line to someone who's a Spanish actor in German while they're speaking back to you in Spanish, and the person in English is speaking their lines in English, and the person in Italian is speaking their lines in Italian. And that's how he films the stuff. And then what they do is they dub it afterwards.
Yeah.
So,
is that the standard practice in Italy then, or is it just as Argento? Do they have regular, or is this kind of like standard?
I think what it did, it was it's actually Mario Bava. Argento was actually a teacher under Mario Bava. Mario Bava taught Argento everything, and same thing with Sergio Leone. Dario Argento wrote the script for The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And that's where, so basically, but Mario Bava used to do the same thing. So the same thing if you watch the Mario Bava film with Boris Karloff in it, for instance, along with the 3 stories.
Oh, Black Sabbath.
Yeah, and Black Sabbath is basically, he's speaking English, everyone around them speaking Italian, and the same thing with Barbara Steele. But though Barbara Steele was quite versed in Italian because she lived in Rome at the time, so.
Well, he said, and he said he was frustrated because then when I forget what region it went over to, they dubbed Jessica Harper's voice, and he liked her voice.
That was the U.S. region.
Yeah, and he was pissed because when they dubbed her voice from to whatever, I think maybe it was Italian or something, they dubbed her voice, and he was like, "No, I liked her voice." So,
which is it's kind of weird that they would actually dub Jessica Harper's voice, because Jessica Harper just came off the back of Phantom of the Paradise, Brian De Palma's film, and that's what got her cast in Suspiria, which was a huge underground cult film that actually did very, very well for itself and helped put Brian De Palma on the map. It was a starting film that got him starting to be more and more noticed. So it'd be strange that they would actually dub her in America.
No, what it wasn't America, it was somewhere else. So somewhere else they dubbed her voice. So they took, it was another region dubbed her voice, and he was like, "Yeah, I wish he wouldn't have dubbed her voice." But it's like funny, the majority of the cast in this film is dubbed.
No, I think that's Jessica Harper speaking, though, isn't it? I mean,
correct.
Did they dub it? I mean, it's her talking, but it's dubbed in. Like there was dead air, and then they just filled it in. Is that how they did it?
I think they had to, because there was a lot of scenes where it would have been weird to have her not dubbed, because the majority of the people were dubbed. So to kind of create the synchronicity to that dubbing, you almost have to do that. Well, otherwise, kind of pans in and out of the dubbing.
What they do after the filming of the film, what they do is get the original, all the actors come back, and if they're doing let's say the German dubbing for it, then what the German actor would do his German, and then they dub everybody else around him, and the Italian actors would do their Italian dubbing, and then dub the other people who didn't speak Italian, and the Americans or the English people wouldn't have to. They would speak their English ones while the other. So basically, they would have like different regions come in on that day to dub for each of the markets.
What do you guys think of that? I mean, I kind of like it in its own way. It creates this special, weird, otherworldly quality in these movies. Like not just Suspiria, but like they were all, so many of those giallos are like that. They have this weird dubbing, and sometimes the dubbing is really terrible. Like in Argento's Opera, his movie Opera. Great movie, but the dubbing is terrible. Suspiria is really not too bad.
I think the dubbing for me, it was synchronistic, if you will, like with the way they spoke, and you could barely tell in that way. But then there are times, I don't know if it's just the person who's talking, how to me, sometimes it sounds a little hokey, or it looks a little hokey, not sounds. It looks a little hokey. It looks a little bit like this movie is meant to be more dark and sinister, and it kind of adds almost like a comedic element to it in a weird way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it's a bit like Demons is not dubbed very well. If you ever watch the Demons, too.
Yes.
And it's like, it's like they're supposed to be terrified, and they just sound like they're dead.
Exactly. Yeah.
Acting. I mean, I think in opera, the funny thing about an opera that you're mentioning is Dario Argento didn't like the main actress in it. They did not get on, and I noticed knowing that now when I watch opera, which if you haven't seen it, it's one of Dario's best actually. Opera is up there with Suspiria and some of the others, but everyone else around the main girl is dubbed okay or quite well, and it's only her that's dubbed really badly. And I'm wondering if he did that because he hated her.
So it makes him just look even worse as an actress. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you see how he treated his wife
in your own film.
So, what about your trip? Tristan, anything else you want to add?
When it comes to the making of it, the only thing I've learned that I haven't heard yet is that, like, the fact that the main actress was dubbed is even more strange, of course, because of the Brian De Palma thing and all that, her being famous in the different parts of the country, but also the fact she even turned down Annie Hall to be in this because she believed in the film so much. Wow. I remember reading something about that before I watched the movie.
And what about yourself, John? Do you have anything you want to add about the making of Suspiria?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I thought was interesting that Nicolodi had actually pulled influence from like fairy tales, so like Alice in Wonderland and Pinocchio, and he even based the character of Susie on Snow White. Like he exampled that character after that, so I thought that was very interesting.
And so what we'll do is, before we go any further, we're going to cut to a commercial break, and we'll have the trailer, and we'll be back with the prologue or a synopsis of the film Suspiria.
Let's play a game. I will ask you yes or no questions. Ready? Do you have a rocking chair to relax on? Do you have space to store your toddler's toys if an unexpected guest came over? Can you lay down comfortably on your couch? If your answer is no to one or more of these questions, then you need the new IKEA catalog. Visit IKEA at Cairo Festival City and get your free copy. Enjoy 1,000 new ideas and more than 2,000 new lower prices. IKEA 2018 catalog. Make room for life.
IKEA.
It's useless to try and explain it to you. You wouldn't understand. It all seems so absurd.
Hey, listen. There they go, right on schedule. The teachers, remember? Can you hear them? They're going away. You hear them? Maybe we can find out where they really go.
A lot of strange things are happening. I mean, for example, when I eat at night, Hello? Hello, Frank?
Susie, do you know anything about witches?
Amazon is here to make your life easier. By just the tap of a button, you can turn the camera on your phone to your own personal shopping list. Introducing Flow. Just tap the camera icon onto the search bar, and you can find whatever it is you're looking for, right on Amazon. Faster than scanning a barcode and typing the name of your item into the search engine. Besides, searching with words is so 2012. Save time and money. Amazon, where shopping meets effortless.
Welcome back. So, John, do you want to give us a brief synopsis of the film Suspiria?
Sure. An American dancer, Susie, is about to attend a prestigious ballet school in Germany. No sooner has she arrived, another student at the school is brutally murdered. Sinister deeds are afoot, and Susie starts to think that the school houses something sinister and evil. Bum, bum, bum.
So, Rob, what's your thoughts on Suspiria?
Well, you were talking about the fairy tale quality of it, and I had read, many readings of the making of it and what it was all about. It is, I think Argento did mean for it to be something of a dark version of Snow White, or a dark fairy tale, and he had originally wanted to cast like 13-year-olds and like girls, adolescent girls, but I think the brutal murders and stuff maybe gave him pause and decided maybe not to do that. I'm not sure, but if you'll notice too, the sets of the movie, which are incredibly cool, when they open the doors in the school, you'll note that doorknobs are really high up, so it makes them look kind of little girlish. And Jessica Harper, I don't know if he intended this, but I mean, she's so perfectly cast because she's got those big wide eyes, and she always looks, rather than being, she looks really vulnerable and stuff, but she almost seems more fascinated by what's going on, along with being frightened. She's fascinated, and she's going to get to the bottom of this. She just projected a kind of inner strength, kind of like that Jamie Lee Curtis sort of like, determination. So you don't feel as afraid for her. You might, with another actress, somehow it was like this perfect synchronicity. I mean, she fit the role really well. Whereas a girl, Sarah, her main ally in the school, super over the top, terrified, and I think she gives a very good performance. That woman. Where was I going with that? It feels like a dark fairy tale, and all the wild, over the top sets, and the Baroque lighting, and all that. I mean, it just adds to the uniqueness, the sui generis feel of the movie. And by the way, I would kill for that apartment, to live in that apartment that Pat goes to, in the beginning.
Wait, were you the one who pushed her through that?
No, I know. But those Escher type paintings on the walls, and that bizarre thing in the corner that looks like I'm not sure whether it looks like a big clay thing. Do you remember on the left?
Oh yeah.
It's just, it's what, and that lobby and that window, all of it is just, again, it just adds to just the amazingness of that film. I mean, it just looks so otherworldly and fantastic and over the top.
I mean, I have to say with Suspiria, I mean, it did change the fabric of horror films, because horror films are they were good, but they just actually turned it into something totally different. I mean, you got something that actually it's an assault of the ears and the eyes. It's like as soon as it starts out, you have that music. And what I found quite interesting about the whole Suspiria film itself is that it's a murder mystery about what happened. But the thing is, it's a murder mystery that tells you who did it at the very beginning. When the first thing it does is like the music starts and all you hear is witch.
Yeah.
And it's, I can see that where Dario Argento, I think, was actually, he was very much influenced by Alfred Hitchcock as well, because there's a lot of that Hitchcockian kind of camera flourishes with it, and setting things up and foreshadowing, and it works very, very well. I mean, I don't think there's ever going to be another film ever like it. I know that they're making a remake at the moment. Well, the remake should be out soon, but I don't think nothing's ever going to compare to the original Suspiria, just for filming and music and sound design and everything itself. And it has Joan Bennett in it. I mean, come on, Dark Shadows, Joan Bennett.
I know. Yeah. Which is odd because they casted the girl Chloe Grace, who was in Dark Shadows, in the remake of that, so it's kind of weird.
Joan Bennett, I have to say, I was just laughing out loud when I watched it the other night. Like, she just throws Susie some major shade, like throughout. Like, she, the looks on her face is so disdainful. She's just so capricious with, that she just kind of half closes her eyelids and says, "Oh, hello." She's great.
I mean, can we also just talk about Miss Tanner, like Frau Farbissina from Austin Powers? I get now the epitome of what she is. She's basically Miss Tanner.
She's great, isn't she? She's just ball busting. She's that is a dance instructor too, right? If anyone knows who ever been through dance and been in a dance, it's like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, keep it going, we keep moving. And she's yelling at them, Yeah, she's like a real Nazi dance teacher.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously Dario is really into the story, but I don't think he's really into the dance. I mean, did you see some of these dancers?
Not at all.
They're either getting ready or they're going somewhere. They're not really ever in the studio, maybe once.
But even when you see them dancing, you see like the skinny guy with the high end trousers and the bell bottoms. He's like doing his dance. It's like it's one of those kind of situations where they sit there and go, okay, dance. I've never danced before. I'll just fake it. It's kind of like that.
Just hops around the room. We'll put one dancer in the front. Go.
But isn't it funny how Argento, so often his heroes and heroines are artists, they're writers or dancers or poets or music students. Susie's a dancer, like in the next movie, Inferno, the sequel to Suspiria, Mark is a music student. And in Deep Red, the guy is a musician, the hero. So I've always kind of liked that he seems to have an affinity for artists,
Yeah. Well, even Bird with the Crystal Plumage, I mean, the main guy there is a writer. He's a novelist.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And note how the very first set piece in Crystal Plumage is in a museum. You know, that famous scene where he's trying to help her, but he's trapped between the walls in the museum, or between the entrance and the other entrance. And then in Tenebrae, one of my favorite Argento movies, this is maybe a spoiler, but somebody gets killed by a piece of art. And in a very spectacular operatic fashion, and it's really great. He has a real affinity with artists, and
I mean, Dario, I mean, even his set pieces, just the way he kills people, it's just so artistically done. You know, it's not just killing. It's just like there's a beautiness and an artisticness to it as well.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard it say they're operatic, and they really are. I mean, the blood sprays and stuff that it sprays in a kind of gorgeous. One character in another movie gets their arm chopped off in Tenebrae. And the way, remember how the blood, you've seen it, right, Keith? Like, and you know how the blood just spurts and makes a spray painting on the wall. I mean, it's so over the top and ridiculous, but it's really cool too. I mean, it's kind of beautiful in a terrible way.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah, even the opening when you see what's her name, Pat, getting killed. You know, it's like the close up of the knife going into the beating heart. I mean, it's like that's Oh
yeah, that was awful.
Yeah.
Watch the scene though, and watch I noticed one point where she gets stabbed. You know, it's the whole thing is bathed in like pinks and these bright colors. At one point, the knife goes into her, and the light increases briefly. It goes, you know, like a spotlight hits it.
Yeah.
You know? So it's very like balletic, even, you know, and even her movements while she's being killed they look really odd. You know, she doesn't move. It's very stagey, you know. And I've heard people say that Italian people, you know, they do, like in their operas, you know, the people who were killed in their operas die flamboyantly. I mean, it's, you know, I can't back that up. I think I just read it somewhere, but it strikes me as something that might be a cultural thing, you know, that go big or go home, you know?
I mean, there's
go ahead.
I think I also find with Dario Argento, there's always kind of humor in the most weirdest places in a Dario film. It's a bit like the butler guy. And she goes, about, like, he doesn't speak English, but he's ugly.
Palacio.
But he's ugly.
Yeah, Palacio. Oh my God, she was so mean to him. And then, you know, the other one that I thought was hysterical was Olga, her like roommate. Like, she was such a like gossipy little witch, literally.
But didn't she have a great apartment? That wallpaper. I mean,
I know. And she's like sitting in her little like chair, and she's on her phone. You know, that hair.
Yeah. It's like Susie goes down this rabbit hole like that. You know, everybody in that school is weird, even if they're not witches. The students are all like, they're obsessed with money, and you know, and there's backbiting, and you know, the whole place is kind of seething, at least at first, and later they just kind of drop all that and get into all the investigation into the witchery and the scary stuff. That whole school, you know, the sets and everything, it's just so unreal that when Susie goes, you know, they have those brief moments where she goes to talk to the professor who's kind of explaining what witches are, and Udo Kier plays that psychologist who was a friend of Sarah's who's disappeared. There's almost like this weird sense like you're out in the real world again. You know, there's real buildings and there's people walking around the actual city. And then when you go into the school, and it's just this dark, weird universe all its own, sort of. Yeah. It's almost like when you go out of the school, you're in reality, and the school is a hyper surreal reality.
Yeah. I mean, the way the halls are, I mean, it's interesting. Obviously, you know, Dario is a huge fan of red. I thought Kubrick was, but Jesus, like every scene is in red, a lot of red. But like the school itself, the facade, if you're, you know, most like Keith is saying, you're flipping the script when it comes to horror movies, when most dark horror movies is like everything's dark, and this is like this red building, a very menacing red building in itself. That is a character, right? So you look at the halls and the woodwork, and it's very maze like. So even when Susie is trying to find out what's going on, and she's trying to find you feel lost with her, like she's counting the steps, and you kind of go, I'm sure if I walked into school, maybe I would get lost too, you know?
Yeah.
I think that it's almost animated to a certain extent as far as the color scheme is. It's like you know, your basic primary colors.
Yeah.
And as you were saying, it's what makes it an odd horror film is the simple fact that everything is bathed in light. There is nothing hiding behind the shadows or anything like that. Everything is well lit. And even when you see the killer's eyes in the opening murder, I mean, you know, they're like piercing green eyes out of the dark.
Yeah.
You know? But everything is just so brightly colored. And I mean, that's why I have to sit there and say this film was made for Blu-ray in high definition. You know, I know they're coming out with a 4K blend of it next coming out of it, but I can understand why every time, you know, technology speeds up or goes better, this is one of the first films that they deal with.
Oh, I would imagine.
And I heard that he sort of chose that location too for the angles and how, because of the way the hallways were built, and it allowed him as a director to make the angles that he wanted to make within that space. So it was very well thought of, you know, from a director's point of view, shooting.
Was it actually filmed in Germany?
No, it was the building. That building was in Rome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They have a habit of like filming things, and they film a lot of stuff in Rome, but they'll do like they have this huge studio in Rome that they film all the interior shots on and stuff like this. The outside shots, what they'll do is they try to find somewhere in Italy that might look like Germany or something like that. Like in Demons, they wanted to make it look American, so they found somewhere in Salzburg that looked like an American street. So they would film in this American-looking street because it had a KFC in the background to make it look like it's American.
So what about that scene? What about the scene where the blind man, you know, eats it? Is that looks like a German square or something? I mean, but I don't know. It's probably a piazza somewhere. I mean, it's a really huge, fast space. It's funny, as many times as I've seen it, as much as I've read about it, I don't know anything about that scene, like where that was.
I mean, he spent about $20 million on this movie. So, I mean, there could have been multiple locations involved, I think, to film those scenes. And by the way, the scene before that, before he gets killed, and, you know, what's her name? Mrs. Ballbuster, like when she gets into a fight with him, he just gives her so much sass back, like, I'm blind, look at me, I'm blind. Just so good.
Yeah. I saw him acting in another a movie called Night Train Murders. I think I saw it on Shudder, and he was the bad guy in that. You know,
funny.
He was really good too. He was kind of scary. So
Daniel's death scene was actually filmed in a square in Munich. So it was actually done in Germany.
It didn't seem like Rome to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Wow. And I love
that was the most surprising part of that movie, in my opinion, because I thought the dog was going to die, and then to see that turn around and happen to him, I was like, "Holy shit! They killed the blind man. That's crazy."
Yeah. I mean, what did people think about the men in this film? I mean, the men are quite bizarre. I mean, you have
deformed even.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you have a mute. You have a blind person. So, and then you have the non-sexual guy, the dancer guy, who's probably asexual, or he's gay. I'm assuming that he's gay.
And then you got the creepy, like Stepford little boy, Albert.
Yeah, you got Albert, and then
awful.
And the only person that actually does have half a brain would be the people that she meets, Udo Kier, and
outside of the school.
But inside the school, they're all called like eunuchs. All the men are eunuchs to a certain extent.
It's like a real matriarchy for sure in the school. Yeah, I think all of that.
Well, part of me was like wondering, so, you know, she gets this letter and she's invited there, but like who sent the letter? So was it the witch who invited her, or like, cause it seems kind of weird, because I know like she had an aunt that I guess that they had mistress knew. So like, it was kind of, it's sort of weird. And I was trying to figure that out. I was like, did she apply to school, and was she invited to school?
Well, it was a very prestigious dance academy. It's supposed to be world known. The dance academy. So, and it also seems like Susie Bainen's aunt knows Joan Bennett's character.
Madame Blanc.
But does that mean that the aunt isn't aware of the whole witchcraft like element in that area? Because she's a terrible aunt. If she was like, yeah,
Go to the school. It's a little weird, but you'll like it.
Yeah, you'll survive. Don't worry about it.
That's all a secret. I mean, that's all like, that's why the witches, like, they sneak off at night and go into the halls of the school. Nobody knows that. They all think, no, this is all above board. There's no witches here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Matt Black met Susie's aunt while she was on tour. So they would have met in the school. So, because she said that, they met on tour or something. Because she does mention that in passing. So, but yeah, I mean, the mother of size. I mean, I guess there's the whole legend behind her, because apparently the school starts out, the history of the school basically starts out as a dance academy and a witchcraft academy at the beginning of it. But then, of course, the fire happened and it turned into a world famous dance academy. It's the story behind the dance academy itself. Yeah. So, but which is quite good. It's like, I'm going to dance until 9 to 12, and from 12 to 5, I got the dark arts.
that girl better watch her step, because I'm getting first place.
So, I mean, the Three Mothers anthology is quite an interesting one, because it basically is these three powerful witches, and one operates out of New York City, which became Inferno, and then there's the Mother of Sighs, or the Mother of Tears, which is basically what we saw in Suspiria, and Our Lady of Darkness, which takes place in Rome, sort of thing. So they were like, and these three houses were built for them. So as you carry on with if you carry on the first two films, the houses mean a lot, and there's significance in the houses and the way they're set out. Unfortunately, by the time the third movie came out in the early 2000s, 2007 it came out, some of this stuff kind of got lost, but it might have been for a lot of different reasons. But they weren't able to carry this process through, and I don't know if that's because of filming technology at that time became more corporate fashioned, and so I think that he wasn't able to put a lot of personal influences on it, so it ended up looking more like a mainstream, because they wanted to market it towards the world, and didn't think the world would want something artistic like they were able to with Inferno and the Suspiria.
Was it set in present day? Because I hadn't seen that one. So was it set like present day, or is it set in that period or that?
No, it's set in 2007.
Oh, okay.
It's just a mix. It's just a messy film. I think the intentions were good. I think there was a lot of influence from studio influencing. I think they had to get a lot of money backing, and I think the people who backed it had a little bit too much to say, so it wasn't able to carry on with the. Because Inferno has a definite look to it. Inferno's all very pastel-y, light blues, a lot of deal with water. It has a lot to a waterous look, even from the opening killing with the water sequences, and that carries that through Inferno. Suspiria is a bit more hard edge, and it deals with fire, so everything's done in reds and strong colors as in fire. Inferno is supposed to be pastels and blues, which it does do. And then you also have a different score by Keith Emerson from Emerson, Lake and Palmer, does the score for Inferno. And this one was supposed to be all done about apocalyptic and blacks. The last one, and they were supposed to have a Cure, a score by Robert Smith from The Cure, and he was going to do the score for it and do a really dark score, but that all got thrown out of the water through post productions and filming problems and trade union problems, and so I think that's the reason why the end of the trilogy doesn't work like it should have worked.
It was a very disappointing movie. I find it like kind of a campy. It's fun to watch. But I was really disappointed in it when I saw it. When it came out, I went to the theater, and it was just sad because it just looked cheap. And there were definitely some good elements to it, but it just didn't feel thought out. And Inferno, in fact, wasn't a disappointing film to me the first time I saw it, but now I really like it a lot. I mean, it's not very linear in its plotting, but I actually think that for Inferno, the sequel to Suspiria, that I think that was when they kind of invented the mythology of the Three Mothers, which I thought was wonderful. I thought was really cool. And it really did feel mythological. And just to see it drop so badly with the Three Mothers, like I said, it's kind of a campy, fun movie to watch, but it's just such a far cry from the quality of the first. It just doesn't have nearly the distinctive visual edge. Yeah, and it just shows that Argento's artistic decline too. Like, he hasn't made a truly good film to me in some time. I think the last movie of his that I liked was Sleepless. I think in 2000.
I think it's also trying to be innovative as well, because that was innovative, and you now fall into this sphere of trying to conform to what other directors are currently doing. And so what happens is what was new, you can try to bring that to something again, but it's now kind of already been replicated in its own way by other directors. So you really have to be innovative. You can't kind of go back to what you just had and go from that. You have to kind of put your next foot forward, if you will.
Yeah.
I also think maybe it's because, when films become more and more expensive to produce, and if you look at Argento's early films, even Suspiria, I mean, it costs a lot to make, but if you compare it to Hollywood films, it's a fraction of the cost. But as the cost comes in more and more, that means you get more and more people involved in the whole filming techniques and the propaganda behind the filming of it, which creates a lot of problems. And so I think what you got when Argento's left to his own devices, you do have some excellent films, as we said before, Oprah, Inferno, Suspiria, the Animal Trilogy, etc. But then you can see where money is starting to make more of a play for it, and Argento's no longer can play by his own rules anymore. Now he has to change to get the money to make his films, and I think that a lot of that has to do with the onslaught of the '80s, with the extreme censorships that were going on and everything that was going on in the 80s. Because the 80s is actually a horrible time actually to make films. Because, as you know, Friday the 13th, Halloween films, Nightmare on Elm Street films all suffered because of the 80s.
Yeah.
And it all do with censorships. You can't make this, you can't make that.
Can't do this, can't do that. Yep.
And we're kind of going through the same thing today. But the story's repeating itself now. Censorship. Now they're talking about even more censorship nowadays. Even though they're getting away with a lot, there is now talk about these tropes are coming back forth again. That films are causing our children to shoot up schools and are causing misogynists and they're causing this, and this is all because of films. And this is all starting to bubble underneath it. So it looks like we might be going through this whole period ever again, as far as which does unfortunately ruin artistry.
Yeah.
It's okay if you're doing something on your own, but if you're not doing something on your own and you have to worry about, studio backing, then you're going to be screwed a little bit, because the studio is going to have to sit there and play the studio publicity game for you, which is happening all the time, whether it's in television, film, or music nowadays, sort of thing. So
I think, though, the difference too nowadays, though, and what I say this to anyone who has a story to tell and the vision for that story, you have the capabilities of doing that now, where in the past you had to heavily lean on the studios to help you produce it. So the good thing about that is like technology and I guess experience has developed these young producers and directors to say, like, well, screw the studio, I don't need them, I'm going to produce on my own, and I'm going to put it out there, and I'm going to market it myself and get it out there myself. And it might not make $100 million, but to speak to studios, a movie can be produced for $60 million and make 140, and it's a failure. Because it didn't catch the reach. So it's a very interesting time. I'm hoping that artists continue to stretch their boundaries, like this artist did, because, we are getting into an age of everything old is new. And it's like, and now we're going to replicate, because we don't really have a new idea. So let's take this idea and tweak this idea. And it's kind of a sad time, because there are things that have a place in time that, that sort of resonate on their own. So you're seeing, the remake of Suspiria, and we'll see how that goes. But if they change a lot of elements to it, it's not sort of the same movie anymore, and you have to go back and default to that. So,
what?
Well, speaking of the trailer, though, has anybody even noticed that, have anybody watched the trailers for the new one? They're not even trying to do the architecture, the color scheme.
No.
They're taking all of that out.
Well, and there's it looks like there's a sacrificial element into it too. It's really weird. Yeah.
But
it's just interesting how it does that.
I'm of the opinion. Okay, here's my thing with sequels, not sequels, but remakes. Okay, Luca Guadagnino, is that his last name? He's an artist.
Yeah,
he's a genuine artist. He's not just some hack. He's not a Michael Bay or whatever. And so when I first heard years ago about, people remaking Suspiria, come on, it's just, how can you don't do it? It's a really bad idea.
Just don't touch it. Don't do it.
But when I heard it was him, I got excited because he's an artist. And even if this film fails, he has a vision, and he is somebody who has some vision and artistry, and he's going to do something. He's taking the basic core of the story and doing something different with it. And it's actually getting a lot of people really like it. I'm like one of the few people who will defend Gus Van Sant's remake of Psycho, which is not
really.
It's not. I think it's a failed experiment, but it was an experiment. He thought his whole idea behind it was, we see plays reinterpreted a zillion times over and over by different artists, blah, blah, blah. How about taking something like Psycho and doing a shot-by-shot thing? Wouldn't that be interesting to do it in a modern setting with different actors and blah, 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 and see how that works out? And I'm probably like, he probably had more complex ideas. I'm putting it as simply as I can. And like, again, while it doesn't quite work, I still think it has an artist's integrity, unlike these cruddy remakes by Michael Bay and Platinum Dunes that were coming out in the early aughts, those terrible remakes of Nightmare on Elm Street and
Texas Chainsaw.
13. Yeah, they're clearly like a buck. I mean, they're slick and all that, but there's like no heart or soul in them at all. And so I'm really looking forward to the Suspiria remake. I want to see it. If it were being done by somebody or whatever, no, I would avoid it. Like I never saw the remake or the film version of Dark Shadows by Tim Burton, because I feel like he just kind of desecrated the whole idea behind it. And I really like Dark Shadows. It turned into a stupid show. I have not seen it. So yeah. I feel like take into consideration the artistry and the artist's intentions of remaking something before you condemn it or embrace it. That's my.
Well, I'll just say, don't get me started on Tim Burton doing Dumbo. I'm just saying, don't get me started on that.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. Tim Burton actually is somebody who just needs to stop for a while. I'm sorry.
Yeah, for real.
just take a break. I think Disney has him on a retainer. Like,
I think
we're gonna remake Bedknobs and Broomsticks. Tim Burton, perfect.
I think with Tim Burton, I think the problem with Tim Burton basically is he's a lazy choice. He's just
exactly
like, oh, this film's got a fairy tale feel about it, Tim Burton, or this looks like it had fantastic set, Tim Burton, but they're not actually giving anyone else a try. And the problem is that Tim Burton's style of tricks has been used up. We've seen everything he can do. He's never going to get any better. He's never going to floor you. The last great thing he did was Ed Wood, and everything after that has been a shadow imitation of everything before.
Yeah,
and to be honest, when you rewatch Batman, even though Batman does capture a time in the 89 to 90 when everything was starting to change for the new decade, he got away with Batman. But if you kind of watch it now, even Batman Returns, you kind of watch it with the simple fact, oh, I quite like this film. But if you go into it with fresh eyes, it's not the greatest film you saw. His greatest film is always going to be Edward Scissorhands.
Yeah.
And Before Christmas, which he didn't direct, which is his characters, and probably Ed Wood. And you don't have to take too much away from him, but I mean, you can give Pee-wee's Big Adventure a bit of kudos there as well, because that's what brought him forth. But anything after that, everything after that, from Big Top Pee-wee on up, is pretty much just him painting by numbers.
Yeah.
And I mean, it'd be interesting if he did go back and reassess, like Rob said to do, and maybe he would come back with something different. But everything has the same look, and anytime you have to use fucking Johnny Depp for anything in a stupid makeup routine is, that's got to stop as well. Yeah. We've had enough of Johnny Depp, because basically we realized that he's not a great actor. He was just a great actor who put on makeup very, very well. So, I mean, I wanted him to be a great actor. I was hoping for him, but now that I've seen him without the makeup trying to do other roles, I'm realizing like, he's not, outside of the Tim Burton makeup roles. So, though Helen Bonham Carter and Planet of the Apes did look like Michael Jackson, so I will give her that.
It's interesting is like going back to Suspiria, like with the remake, they have a somewhat strong cast. I don't know if I necessarily would love that Dakota Johnson is the lead for this, because if she brings any of that gray business, I'm not gonna be happy about that. But it'll be interesting to see how the cast does, because they did pick, Tilda and Chloe, and there's just some strong characters in that.
Yeah,
I think Tilda Swinton's a good choice, because whatever she does, there's always a presence with whatever she does. Even if it's a really bad film, there's always a presence with her.
Yeah,
she does a really good job playing sinister too. Like there's something about her that you're just, I'm just afraid of her. I don't even know her.
But it's quite funny.
A worldly quality to, she does. Like, did you see Gugugino's? I hope I'm saying his last name right. The one with Ralph Fiennes and Tilda Swinton. She was really great in that too. Did you see that? I can't remember the name of it though.
About the dress or whatever.
It's not a genre movie, but it was. Matthias Schoenaerts was in it too, and I'm blanking.
Yeah, I'm blanking on it as well. I mean, the funny thing that you say about Tilda Swinton, that she does all these like serious movies and stuff like this in First Presence, but every once in a while she'll pop into British sitcoms and play a character.
Oh, will she?
Yeah. So she's quite good. So is there anything anyone wants to add on Suspiria before we go on to The Witch?
I will just say one more little thing that I love about it is it features another Dario Argento trope, which is the protagonist saw or heard something that they cannot quite, what was that thing I saw? Or what was that thing that she said? And that provides the clue to helping them figure out the mystery. We saw this in Deep Red, the bird with the crystal plumage, or Flies in Gray Velvet, I think, something like that. Tenebrae, Inferno, what's that thing under the feet? What? But and Susie's, though, I loved it. The whole mystery, the whole key to the mystery was what Pat said about irises and secrets when she ran screaming out of the school at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
That's really great. And there's a fairy tale quality to that. If you can just remember that one thing, or what was that thing that you saw in the hallway, after the murder? Like what was different? I just think that's a really great little trope, and he returns to it over and over.
And notice she does remember after she realizes she's like being roofied the entire time on her diet. Once she abandons that diet, it's like all of a sudden she's like, oh, look, I can actually stay up past 5. Like every time her friend was like, why are you not focused? She's like, I'm so tired. And I was like, girl, it's 5 o'clock. Wake up.
You finally picked up that you're being drugged.
Yeah. She's like, I wonder if this blood red liquid I'm drinking right now has anything to do with me knocking out.
I do like the little flourish about like behind the iris and what that actually meant when it all came together. That was very clever.
Yeah.
Very cool. And plus,
even the steps, counting the steps, because I was at first confused by that. I'm like, what is she talking about? And then it was like she gave her that napkin, and then she started to do that. And I was like, oh my God, that's actually really smart to like know you're listening and you hear, the stop, stop. Like you have to count out, and that's how you know the perimeter, I guess. That's really smart.
Again, it's a childlike quality to it. So it reminds me of like listening to how many footsteps. That way we can figure out where they go. It's almost like the breadcrumbs in Hansel and Gretel. There's something about it that's kind of poetic and
Nancy Drew.
Yeah. I just really like that. Yeah.
I got some really good decorating tips. I want to have a house with a huge hallway and then hang curtains or fabric down one side of the hallway instead of having it painted.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to have a room that just has barbed wire in it.
Yeah. And the maggots. The maggots were a good thing.
That was gross.
So, and even the scene in the gymnasium. It's so well filmed.
Yeah.
And that snoring. I understand the snoring part of it because I kind of have to go through that every night with Isaac. So.
Been there, done that.
Yeah.
You're like, who is it? Someone who has sleep apnea. Give him a machine.
What about yourself, Tristan? Is there anything else you want to add before we close on Suspiria?
Well, I would just say about the film, from anybody that's around my age, 28 or so, living through the early 90s, that hasn't heard of this film, the best way to look at this movie when you're starting in is, if you want to see a movie that's a horror film, but it's storyboarded by a child, I mean that in the most positive way possible, then this is the movie to see. I absolutely loved it. And that was what really brought me to it.
So now what we're going to do is we're going to close the fairy tale of Suspiria and go into a folk tale of New England called The Witch, which is directed by Robert Eggers. What's interesting is that Robert Eggers is very, very much in tune with the 1600s witch trials, and he decided to make a film that went along with a folk tale about a family who's been accosted out about and what that would mean, and about how maybe a family would get involved and realize what would happen if they were in the presence of a witch. He actually made this film for a budget of $4 million, and it actually grossed $40 million, and it was one of those huge surprise hits at 2015 Sundance Film Festival. So, John, is there anything you'd like to add about the making of The Witch 2015?
I mean, one of the things I liked about the film in the sense is that there's a stylistic that, while when I was in school, most of our plays were not like Our Town or, Catcher on the Rye. It was like The Crucible. So one of the things I thought was very interesting is how the director kind of captures this period of time, in 1630s, I think was when they were portraying, and how he was able to execute that, and that sort of feeling of abandonment from the community that this family has to leave. I'm not really strongly familiar with this director, but I appreciated that approach. And like, again, I'm always like, the characters are not just the physical, human beings in the films. It's also the surroundings. The woods in themselves are a character. And I think he does such a great job capturing that.
And what about yourself, Rob? Do you have anything about the making of The Witch?
The Witch is, to me, it feels like, I just watched that again too. I had seen it before and I liked it. To me, it feels like an Ambrose Bierce story brought to life. It's very dark, and it's and I almost interpret it. I mean, it could be interpreted as a movie, and not anti-religious, but it's an anti-patriarchal movie. I mean, I kind of feel like the dad kind of gets them in this fix right from the beginning, and everything just kind of unravels. It's almost as if his refusal to listen to anybody else, which includes the people in the church, in his original church, and then his wife and his distraught children, just kind of like hastens the family's demise. It kind of opens a door to the evil, the terrible evil that kind of, destroys them. Spoiler alert. Sorry, guys. It's a dark, and again, it feels like an Ambrose Bierce. And again, and when they say a New England folk tale, the filmmaker 100%, nailed it, that he just captured the mood and the harshness and the beauty of that trope of story. It's a very well done movie.
And what about yourself, Tristan? Anything to add about the making of The Witch?
I feel as though the writer and director, if they were one single person or two, when they were talking to the producer, that they went up to the producer and their tagline was this: what if the Game of Thrones met the puritanical, and how fucked up would that be? I feel like that's this movie.
Pretty much. Last one standing.
That's my thoughts on it.
Well, what we're going to do is we're going to cut to a commercial break, and then we'll be back with the trailer for The Witch.
Hello?
What's your favorite scary movie?
I have a bunch of favorite movies. I watch them all on Shudder.com for only $4.99 a month.
That's a scary low price.
But if I had to pick a favorite, it'd probably be Scream.
Oh.
Yeah, it's the only streaming service that lets me watch hundreds of horror movies on demand.
I'll be right back.
Hello? 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 Are you gonna subscribe? Hello?
Go to Shudder.com to subscribe, if you dare.
What went we out into this wilderness to find? Leaving our country, kindred, our fathers' houses. For what? For the kingdom of God. Let us pray.
You've cursed this family. Who's there?
Oh God, my Lord, I now begin. Oh, help me and don't leave my sin. For I repentant thou shalt be. From evil I will turn to thee. None ever shall destroy my faith. For I repentant thou shalt be. Oh God, my Lord, I now begin. Oh, help me and don't leave my sin. For I repentant thou shalt be. From evil I will turn to thee.
There's the evil of the wood.
Welcome back. Now we're going to be discussing The Witch, the 2015 film by Robert Eggers. But before we go there, I'd like to tell everyone that to make sure they go to Seat Giant, www.seatgiant, SEATGIANT.com to get their tickets and put LL Podcast in a discount, and you'll get 20% off all your tickets. One good thing about them, I've actually got my tickets to go see John Carpenter, the John Carpenter director in concert here in London. So I'm going to go see him. And I got those through Seat Giant. So if you want to get good seat with a good price and get an extra 20% off, go to www.seatgiant.com. So now as we go into The Witch, John, do you want to give us a brief synopsis?
Sure. Picture it. New England, 1630. I'm sorry, I was just channeling Sophia from Golden Girls. No, William and Catherine tried to lead a devout Christian life, homesteading on the edge of a vast wilderness with their 5 children. When their newborn son mysteriously vanishes and their crops fail, the family begins to turn on one another. The Witch is a chilling portrait of a family unraveling within their own sins, leaving them prey for an inconceivable evil.
So, Tristan, what are your thoughts about the film The Witch?
Well, I mean, to be honest, like I watched it maybe 2 or 3 months ago for the first time, but I will say that like since then, there's like one image that just stays in my mind, and that has to be when the crow is just pecking at the mother's breast. Like I don't know how that happened, but it is bothering me. It is upsetting me. Like my wife has one note for this movie because we watched it together, and the one note that she has for this movie is that's what pure evil is. And that's her only thought, is that this movie is terrible, but not that it's bad in itself, but you know the subject matter that it chooses shows pure evil incarnate within its artistry. So to me, I feel like because of that, it was able to actually attain its goals as a work of art, as a great film, because it made you want to turn away, but it was so good, I had to see it to its end whether that end was meeting the devil and becoming a witch or what have you, it made me want to watch it, even if it made me uncomfortable, which is absolutely maybe the most uncomfortable probably I've ever been watching just a regular film I've never heard of before.
I have to sit there and say my favorite character is Charlie, and Charlie played the part of Black Phillip, the goat.
Yeah, for real.
I have to sit there and say it's a folk tale, but it's also a folk tale about when city folk go to the country. I mean, it just seems like I don't know. I mean, the funny thing about the film is like when you're watching the film and they outcast themselves from the society to make it on their own. I'm not quite sure what they did for a living because the father can't hunt. Apparently he can't do crops or anything like that. So I don't know if they actually lived in the town, and I don't know if they owned a shop or whatever. But I knew that they didn't seem very attuned into like experience life in the wild. Though I had to sit there and say they were able to build their house quite well.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, there's a lapse of time of like knowing how long they're actually been out there. But I was like, wow, I mean, for literally going out in the middle of nowhere, they built a really established like home, barn, shed for the goats, that was impressive. I mean, maybe that's his skill was. Maybe he was like architect.
It certainly wasn't interfamilial relationships, not so good there, but he built a damn good house. I assume he got some, I don't know, he was such a patriarchal figure. I'm trying to figure out if he would have let them help him build it, but anyway.
Yeah. I love the mother too. The mother, I've seen her in a couple things before, and she definitely it's a similar type of character where she's trying to be very nurturing, but then the moment there is this sort of loss, there is this, it's almost like it's a despair that sets over, and it kind of, she talks about this, like she says to her husband, like basically it's like, I'm just cold now. There's nothing left inside me. When, spoiler alert, when her baby, Samuel goes missing, it's as if she just has given up on everything. And, she has these other kids to raise and she'll do it, but she's just like cold, and she just turns cold inside.
Kind of like the mother in Ordinary People, one of my favorite non-horror films. You won't get it.
Mary Tyler Moore, she can be a bitch. I mean, one thing it's kind of funny because when I set out to watch this film, and I watched this film last night, and I meant to take note of it, and for some reason I took note of it, but I don't remember it. Was when they're standing being accused in the beginning of the film in front of the town council?
Yeah,
did she have the baby at that point, or is there no baby there?
I think she did, because I can't recall. I mean, I guess my focus was on him, because it was more camera angle was on focus on the father kind of reject. And I'm assuming the reason why they're leaving is they're kind of rejecting a religious view, like a Protestant view versus maybe some other religious view, I think, because there's mention of that. And it's sort of like, are you going to commit to our God or, our faith? And he's like, no. And it's like, well, you got to go. And he's like, okay, and then, they leave. But maybe it's like the mother was holding it because the focus is more on him than anything else.
Now, the reason why I wanted to make note of this is to figure out how much time passed from when the film starts to get going from the opening sequence. And that's why I thought it's like you can go by the aging of the baby sort of thing.
Oh, that's true. Actually, no, that would make sense then, because if their baby there wasn't a baby.
Because I know she wasn't pregnant, but I couldn't. But I go, I'm going to make special attention to see if she's holding a baby here. And of course, I watched it, and I still, didn't register whatsoever.
I'll have to go back, because I think where you'll tell is when they're leaving the town, and I guess my eyes were so focused on the peripheral behind them when they're closing the gates and they're kind of going through that you don't notice what's going on in the carriage or the cart, I should say.
One thing that's really interesting to me about the movie, I know for me, it was surprising how quickly it happens. I mean, the baby disappears really quickly. I was thinking it was going to be more of a slow burn type of thing. Maybe I'm used to those kind of slasher movies where everything takes forever to kind of get going, which I actually like. I actually like to feels normal as possible before things go to hell. But the baby disappears like within like 5 minutes or so of
Yeah, and note to self, if you're ever playing peekaboo with your child, make sure someone at least is looking at where that child is.
That's really, I'm not surprised they put it in the trailer because it's a really frightening, potent scene. It's just,
Well, those witches run fast. I mean, they got to be the fastest witches in any movie I've ever seen. I mean, they're in and out really quickly. I mean,
yeah.
The Flash. The witch,
and then they follow it up, and you actually see like they kind of show you like the witch like sharpening knives and stuff. It's really brutal. It's really horrifying. Luckily, the director is artistic and has good taste, and we don't see anything. We just see the witch kind of bathing in blood, and it's just.
But also just even the touching and where she's kind of literally caressing the child, the baby, and the way she's touching the baby, and then. Just, as a guy, anywhere where, a person puts a knife near your penis and then they cut scene, you're like, well, there you go. And I'm terrified.
It's horrifying. And, it's funny, a lot of, I love reading other people's opinions of things. And there's a real schism with horror fans. Like there's a whole set of horror type fans that just cannot deal with art house type films. They just don't, they hate The Witch, they hate It Follows, they hate The Babadook. And I think that's really interesting. It's like they just kind of don't want to go there. They wanted to see good, clean kills. And I'm not sure. What do you guys think of that? I mean,
I think the reason why horror is kind of built in these two camps personally, I think is because I think people are quite happy watching horror, whether it's like, the slash and kills or the Conjuring films or something like this, where basically you kind of watch it, you leave the theater and you leave it behind. It doesn't stay with you. But when you watch the horror film that does stay with you, and Wolf Creek for me is one of these kind of films. When I saw Wolf Creek, it's like it haunted me for like, and maybe it's because they don't like the unsettling feeling that when you leave and then 2 weeks later that film still unsettles you.
Yeah,
and maybe they just want the quick, it's like going into a haunted house. Now that it's Halloween time, you go in there, get your cheap thrills, get your cheap scares. You leave, you laugh with your friends, and you carry on with life. But then they have it haunt you afterwards. And I think The Witch is one of those films that does haunt you afterwards. It stays. It's always staying in the back in your subconscious. It's still wheeling there, like long after you've seen it.
I think it's also too when you have some, you have some slasher films that give you so much exposition about what the evil is or what the threat is. And then you have those other, movies like this that there's not a lot of exposition with what is in the woods, right? You see, and the good thing about this, which I think is very different from like, let's say Blair Witch, right? There's a lot of exposition there of what it is and you don't see it, but there's constantly this threat that's looming. Whereas in this, you don't have any sort of explanation other than the little snotty, what is it, Mercy, the little snotty twin who's like calling, the sister a witch. She has an idea of what, took their brother, but there's no explanation, but you see it. You constantly see these imageries of these things that are out in the wood, and there's that threat. But it's to me, what sets with me more when I watch horror movies isn't the in-your-face slasher type movie that scares me the most and lingers. It's unknown, and I don't know what's happening. And once you do, and you kind of get a glimpse of it, and you don't know the full truth, that sets with you deeply. I mean, for me, it does.
Yeah. I put this together. I remember there was this whole little trilogy. Well, I guess it's kind of a trilogy of films, although there's a bunch on Shudder that I'm really liking too. There's good movies that I've been watching there. But It Follows, Babadook, and The Witch all came out in successive years, and they kind of get lumped together as the art house horror, and they all have they're more elliptical in their storytelling. We don't really know they come with a lot of metaphorical stuff, especially like It Follows. There's the whole.
I love that movie. It's actually one of my favorite movies. It Follows.
it's one. I think it's just fantastic. I've seen it, and it was filmed kind of near Detroit, like and I remember when I saw stills from it, I thought, oh, what, that looks like Detroit, and it was. So I think there's a lot of fans that just don't want to think, and I'm actually not crazy about the Babadook. I should probably watch that again. I appreciated it more than I really loved it.
To me, it was the Babadook for me as a kid. It made me very pro-abortion. That kid was horrible. I'm sorry.
Oh, I know. I agree.
And I think that if you get past that kid, I mean, I know the kid's fantastic in the role. There's nothing against the kid, but because he's so annoying that sometimes it takes away from the appreciation of the film. Because I would love to see the Babadook again, but it's that blonde hair kid. I can't hear him screaming.
Well, it's also like he the way he acts in it. It's like you're trying to determine whether or not the woman is just losing her mind or there is something going on. And they're like, well, I would lose my mind too with that child. Like, literally. Yeah. Go in the basement, get in the basement, you little shit.
Tristan, as a new father, what are your take on these movies with kids and stuff? These scary movies featuring kids, like, is it uncomfortable?
I mean, shoot. To be honest, I mean, I think I was those kids, so I can't really look at it as like I'm afraid, I'm worried about my future son dealing with me and me dealing with him. I knew I was like that. I was angry for no reason. I was upset. I was nervous. I had anxiety. And then back then, that's when kids were given Ritalin and all these different pills to just change who you are, which my little brother had to deal with. And not to give out his life too much, but I know that it did not help him is the easiest way to say it. So to me, it's more of an exaggeration built upon reality. And it's something that while certain people will never have to deal with it, and, God love them, but anybody else who has to deal with just everyday life and the things that make us horrible human beings, we just have to grow from it and learn from it. And that's what I think great horror is. And these films that you're bringing up now are better than just slasher flicks, scary movies, which, not to hate on those, I love those films. But at the same time, I love a movie that can stay with me beyond the months that I've already watched it. Like, for instance, with The Witch, I've seen it months ago. I didn't have to rewatch it. I knew I didn't have to rewatch it because it's stuck in my mind. Not just that scene with the crow. There's plenty of things there that horrified me because I knew I was going to be a father, and I knew that I was a child before being a father and all the issues that they had to deal with for me, but seeing it in a setting back in the day. So when it's just a typical slasher flick, there might be machismo in me or whatever, but I'm like, no, I can handle Jason, blah, blah, blah. But when it comes to like a witch that's just in the forest, I don't know what I would do when it comes to that. It's horrifying.
It's also interesting because the majority of the cast are kids, and that's another element that I didn't really think about that is unsettling, that you have these parents who are the protectors, right? And ultimately the dad, like Keith was saying, he sucks at hunting, he sucks at farming, he's just trying to provide for his family, and then one son disappears and then another son gets sick, and then it's like one thing after another, and it's the parents are slowly losing their minds and they're not holding it together. And so now, what are the kids supposed to do? Like there's no community for these kids to like go to like kind of, they have to rely on their parents,
Yeah. I feel like Caleb, the little boy, or the oldest boy, he seems to be, when I watched it again, he seems to be the one character whose demise, spoiler alert, sorry folks.
Yeah.
He seems to be the one whose demise is redemptive, actually. I mean, to me, it seemed like that was the one moment in the movie where all this God-fearing religion actually helped somebody.
Yeah.
An epiphany, you kind of think, oh, okay, so maybe having a little prayer, a little faith or whatever can actually, turn out okay for somebody even at such a moment.
Yeah.
Whereas everybody else dies or, or is corrupted, and yeah, that was the one scene. It was kind of like the one little moment of hope in a very bleak story, quite frankly.
Well, I think with Caleb for me was probably the only voice of reason out of the whole bunch. Yeah. I mean, the thing is that if he never he's the one who's like, okay, well, I need to go hunting because actually Dad can't do it, and I need to provide for the family because Dad can't do it. And this is Kayla's role, and I know, and up until before his demise, I mean, the thing is before he disappears, he's actually the only one that's making sense. I think everyone's kind of lost in their own religious road, for whatever reasons those are. And where Caleb is like the voice of reason, so if that never happened and Caleb was there, I don't think things would have spiraled out of control as fast as they would have with Caleb, because everyone else is. I mean, it's almost a cautionary tale. But if you put your belief in just one thing too long and too strong, that if it doesn't work out for you, your life is pretty much going to go tumbling down. And that's what I get from the whole situation.
Yeah,
well, it's also just like the balance of each of the members of the family. You have roles, especially back then. You had roles to live up to, if you will. So like the daughter, I'm surprised that the mother let the twins just go run around and be kids, because of that time, even kids that big would be like, mom would be like, get your butt over here, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that. You have these roles, and it's sort of like trying to adhere to the roles that you're kind of, I guess, like stuck to. And so like Thomasin, for instance, like she knows she has to be her mom's right arm basically, and take care of the kids and take care of the wash and do this and do that. She's starting to lose herself in this bleakness. There's nothing else there to kind of help her. What am I going to be? This is what I'm going to be, and so that's also a sad thing is to see that these people are trying to adhere to these roles, and it's actually breaking each one of them individually.
I think Thomasine, like, how she becomes corrupted by the end, like you absolutely like, oh yeah, totally go with the devil. It's going to be it's going to be way better. She can at least live deliciously as he promises her, and then and she can have some fun, because let's face it, life on that farm was not fun. It was just grueling, and I mean, she kind of gets terrorized into being corrupted in some ways, but and I actually like the way the little girl Mercy kind of early on, you realize like she kind of intuits that Thomasine is, maybe slipping, maybe isn't, I thought that was really, there's lots to interpret with that film. I didn't catch that. It rewards multiple viewings, I think.
Yeah. No, I agree. Cause the first time I kind of thought maybe Thomasin was in it. Maybe she was corrupted from the beginning. Then I watched it a second time and I was like, no, you kind of have a different perspective when you obviously rewatch something over and over again. And I watched it again last night for I think the third or fourth time, and you see her just kind of like, what's the point now? Like, I've been trying to be this person they want me to be and failing. My mom blamed me for my brother disappearing. My brother wants to sleep with me because there was that little sexual innuendo too.
Yeah.
And then the twins are just like bratty little kids who won't listen to her and then accuse her of being a witch, right? And that it's so she's losing on all sides. The only person who had her back was really her dad in some ways. And
I found him a bit sexually leechy this time around viewing it. It's almost, it's like, it's like you're going to take the place of your mother kind of thing. It's like,
he's like, come here, I'll soothe you. And you're like, well, there's slim pickings out there. I'm just saying, eventually, the boy, you can't help Caleb, but like he's looking at her chest. And well, he doesn't have nothing else to look at. So, well, there's a goat. No,
I had to say,
and all that invites when you start thinking those dark thoughts, that's when the evil looking bunnies with weird eyes come looking at you.
Yeah.
I will say that bunny was scary. That was a scary bunny. Really. And it wasn't even a bunny, it was a rabbit. I shouldn't call it a bunny because a bunny means it's,
it's fuzzy and funny.
Regular. Yeah. But kudos for making a rabbit look so sinister.
Creepy.
For real.
What I would also say for anyone who's watching this, because so the first time I ever watched this with my friend who lives by subtitles. He needs subtitles for everything, even though if you speak in English, he has to have it in subtitles. Suri will not understand you ask for closed caption if you try to do it on your Apple device, because apparently the way they speak back then, it's a different dialect of English. So he was getting frustrated. He could not. He's watching. He's like, I don't know what they're saying. We had the TV full blast up because the way they speak is very different. So it's a cautionary thing for anyone who's watching this. Don't get frustrated. Just watch. Sometimes if what they say doesn't make sense, just watch.
I do have to say that the dad with his deep sonorous voice, I had a really hard time understanding him at times what he was saying.
Well, even the son, because he would things like he would start going fast, and you would catch sin, father, he would catch everything.
Yeah, I almost feel like I should have watched it on my computer with my headset on. That might have helped a bit. Because the two of them, it was sometimes hard. I never had trouble with what is the woman who played Thomasine? She's really good.
That's Anna Taylor-Joy.
Yeah, it's a very wonderful actress. I thought I think they all did a fantastic job. I thought the mother was really good too. And they all looked the part too, didn't they? They just all looked like Puritans, and
they look like they could be part of the same family, which was quite well done as well.
Yeah, exactly.
They did a good job of matching them up. Though I have to sit there and say that the fraternal twins, they kind of remind me of my childhood, not the way they were acting or their childhood. My childhood is nothing like that, okay? It was horrible, but it wasn't like that. But it's the clothes, they look like those snowmobile suits that your parents used to put you on. When it got cold and you couldn't put your arms down because there's so much padding. It's like they were like all these, I don't know what clothing they were wearing, the twins. But I mean,
the scene where the younger girl was running around and she's like, I'm a witch, and she was doing it she didn't look the age she was. It was weird, right? Maybe it was because of that clothes. It was the padding on her, but she was like, and she was jumping around.
At one point, her dress looked like she had breasts. At one point,
I
don't know if it's the padding that they used in the suits, but they looked like they were wearing these, Puritan versions of snowmobile suits.
Going back to Anna Taylor-Joy is actually she was one of the leads in Split, and we're actually covering Split, and she's going to also be in Glass. So I just wanted to tease that as well.
I mean, The Witch is, I think it is a cautionary tale, basically about, be careful what you wish for because you might get it. And I think it's a bunch of people who put their faith in one, I said before, into one, whether it's God or any, believing into just one thing, and then expect that one thing to get them out of the situation. When in all actuality, I think that they stuck to their guns and wasn't so involved in their own superstitions that they probably wouldn't have had, it wouldn't have been so frightfully happening that happened to them. I think they probably would have survived a little bit. I mean,
well, it's also Dad, what kicked them out of where they were living was the dad being a hypocrite, because here he wanted to practice this faith, right? And then what is the first thing the dad does? He breaks his faith. He sells his wife's the cup, the silver cup that the wife had, that was the dad's, and he wouldn't own up to it. And I love that the daughter, she gets frustrated because then the dad drags her out and it's are you a witch? And he accuses her, and she's like, tell the truth. And she's like, oh, you want the truth? Okay, fine, let's go. And she literally just lays it out for him, and he gets mad. But it's this moment of, this hypocrisy. You dragged us out here because you're trying to be so religious and so perfect, right? And you want to follow your way. But look what you did. Look what you did to our family and how you brought us out here. This is your fault, And she calls him out on it. And I think it's a moment that you're like, wow, okay.
Well, do you think the mother was jealous of Thompson?
Yes, absolutely. Because again, at that time, that was a possibility that your daughter would actually become a concubine too.
Mm. Oh.
And so it's that she probably saw her as a threat.
Because I found it very bizarre that the two little kids come in, and in normal society, I would sit there and say that if I did something, if my two little brothers and sisters came in and started, accusing me of whatever, I don't think my parents would, in today's society, would actually go and say, oh, they're speaking truth or whatever. And it seemed like the mother was quick to sit there and change her opinion and go against her eldest daughter. And I found that well, obviously there must be something more going on here. And then when rewatching it, I noticed like the funny looks that the mother does get to to her eldest daughter throughout the film. And I just kind of wonder, maybe there was a jealousy thing going on there. And the way that the father's always pawing over his daughter. I mean, when I first saw this, I didn't really pick this up the first time, but watching it this time around, part of it felt a bit uncomfortable with the father and daughter sequences sometimes.
I mean, I also think that part of the mother's look at her and her, I would say, even frustration or disdain of her daughter is that it's technically her fault why her youngest child disappeared. And it's like, if you think of any parent, and it's sad because, imagine being a couple and then something happens and it's your fault. I was literally talking to someone about this the other day, how people sometimes leave their kids in the car and the car overheats and the kid dies, or the parent runs over the child. There's no way you can ever look at that person ever again the same way. And even though you love that person, imagine now a child doing, like your own child doing that to another one of your children. You're never going to look at your kid the same way. And you would never say, I hate you, but there's a part of you that's going to show it, right? Like, because remember when the dad comes home and the first thing she's like comes back and the dad's dirty and she's like, get his linens clean, do this. Like, and she's yelling at her, like, I'm going to torture you, little girl, until it's the end of your days,
Well, I have to say, you don't really get a sense of what the family's like too much before they move. But I mean, the mother's kind of dried up and bitter, and the father's kind of like, I don't think there's ever a laugh. I mean, they got so many frown lines to both of them. I don't even I don't even know if they've had any laughter in their lives. So, but maybe that's, what highly religious people do. They just sit there and walk around horrible and bitter and maybe not in love or not laughing too much. or if you're not that religious, you tend to learn to take the piss out of yourself a bit. But yeah, it just seems like the whole family dynamics is kind of like, they had kids because they wanted, they had to have them, and maybe to work the land and to take care of the family. That's the reason why they had the kids. But yeah, the family dynamics are a bit odd, I found, with this group. They don't seem like a loving family. They don't look like a loving family that something horrible happens. They seem to be a miserable family and something miserable happens.
Yeah.
Because it makes everything more miserable.
That's the Puritan life. It was not fun. Especially when witches were attracted to you and decided to just totally take you all out.
Yeah. Well, as I said before, when I die, I want to go to hell, because who wants to spend eternity with a bunch of born-again Christians? I mean,
well, now that you're up here, you have to check yourself every single day. You're like, damn it.
Yeah, all the best music's going to be in hell. So I mean, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's a fantastic film and it works on a lot of different levels. But I think if I had to have a wish list for the film, it would have been nice to see what the normal was for them before they moved here. If they were, just a little precursor about whether they were a happy family, and then when they moved here, everything became miserable, or were they miserable from birth?
Yeah, my sense is they were probably not super happy ahead of it, because again, they were like Puritans and stuff, but definitely more stable. That's just my thought. But yeah, that would have been an interesting.
Well, it's interesting. Now thinking, it's like these little like, oh yeah, the fact that the father, and this is, I don't know if the mother took it or if it was given to her, but a silver cup, that's money. So was her father really well off? And so she went from being in a very stable, safe, well-off family to, oh great, now I'm chopping wood, or now I'm out here soiling clothes,
Yeah, I think that there was definitely like that sense that perhaps things weren't going the way she wanted them to in this marriage. I would assume that maybe that marriages back then were all arranged.
Yeah, I'm assuming that the silver cup might have been the dowry.
Yeah.
True.
I can't picture those two like dating,
Yeah.
No, I mean, yeah, I just imagine that. Yeah, the dating probably wasn't a go, and I imagine, yeah, as you were saying before, it probably was all prearranged. But if it was prearranged and the dowry was a silver cup, and that if that made that, would that mean that the family? I mean, I got a feeling basically what's happened is when they were in England, I think everything was fine. He became righteous and pious, and they decided to move to the New World. Plenty of those, because that's what America's made up of, is people that have been cast out of their own country for religious reasons. So they moved to the New World, and then it looks like he couldn't even get on with his own sect. That they, basically had to break away break away even from them because he was just pious. One of those religious pious people that don't do as I do, but do as I say type of persons. And maybe he was like the Jim Baker of 1600s. But meanwhile, like we're going to bathrooms and fiddling with people. You know what I mean? But at the same time, this is not what I am or what I do.
Going to outhouses and fiddling with people.
I'll meet you in the outhouse.
Look through the moon.
But I do agree with Rob, is that if I had to have a choice between living with this family, those kids are horrible. They're not. Caleb's probably the only decent person that I probably, if I was born in that family, I probably get on with Caleb. I probably get on with the older sister. But everyone else, I probably go for the life of the witches. They look a bit more fun. You get to fly in the air, you get to hang around naked next to a campfire when it gets cold, and
smash up baby parts and rub it all over your body. It's amazing.
As long as it's not your baby, you're fine. You know what I mean? So I guess, is there any other final thoughts that we have about The Witch? And
I'm always like, I'm gonna start, and then I'm like, oh, I'm afraid I'm gonna be like, and I think it was a pick. I think it was one of my picks. I really enjoyed this movie. I remember the first time seeing it. I really loved it. I love that you really don't know what's going to happen at the end and where it goes after that. I love that the wilderness in itself and being out on your own and sort of facing what that is terrifying, but the fact that then there's something else menacing in that's in the dark, that just adds to that level of fear. But yeah, it's something that I highly suggest people watch. Bear with the language, like I said, and just enjoy the ride.
Yeah, I would say it's a neat little morality tale, and a very dark morality tale. And it's not it's not a simple horror film. It's an art house item. It's very well done, and I'll be really curious to see what the director Robert Eggers does next.
And what about yourself, Tristan? Any final thoughts about The Witch?
I would say that if you're gonna watch this film, come at it with like the mindset that what if like the people who put out those terrible rumors back during those times about witches and all those things were true, and then this would be a film that you could look at it as fact in that sense, and it would be interesting to see how that would have developed. And it's a really great film. Definitely watch it.
For me, I think it's one of those must-see films. I think that if you like horror and you like the different aspects of horror and the horror genre or dark fiction genre, depending on what word you're now comfortable with, The Witch is we're very much worth seeing. It's on Netflix over here in the UK, so there's no reason not to view it. And I think that once you see it, I think that you'll be pleasantly surprised. Yeah. So before we close, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around and ask each of our co-hosts and guest co-hosts their final thoughts on Suspiria and The Witch as two films put together.
Oh, Lord. Just kidding.
So, Rob, what are your thoughts about watching Suspiria and The Witch as two films put together?
Oh, my goodness.
And which one do you prefer?
Well, I guess since I'm really into Italian horror films and Dario Argento and just the really over the top visual and oral qualities of Suspiria, that would be my pick. The Witch is more it's a more thoughtful item. It's not like a fun evening of watching of film watching. So I think that's it's like kind of like over the top whack job craziness next to thoughtful, dark. They're both wonderful films. They're completely different. I mean, you could do, in a college course, you could do a compare contrast thing with them that would be much more deep than anything I would have to say here. They're both excellent films. But if I were going to pick one to watch next Saturday night, it would probably be Suspiria.
And what about yourself, Tristan?
Which is an every couple years thing.
I would say that first off, it's inspired that y'all even chose these two to compare because, like I said before, I wouldn't have compared the films any other way besides the fact they did, feature witches. One that's constantly overaching and coming around you, and the other one that you don't even know where they're coming from until close to the end of the story. And to me, I think The Witch may be more meaty of a story, but I would still say I probably won't ever watch The Witch ever again. I think that Suspiria is one that I will continue to bring myself towards because the stylistic choices, the colors, even the acting with the dub that I had to deal with, and I'm sure many other people did, is still very interesting and pulls me in, makes me want to know more about the characters, which I don't know if it follows through with the trilogy like y'all had brought up, but to me, I think they're both great films in their own way, in their own period, in their own time, and I'm looking forward to the remake, and I'm also looking forward to more that Robert Eggers does after The Witch. So they're wonderful films. Definitely watch them.
What about yourself, John?
I'm gonna have to say that when I first watched Suspiria, I did not like it. But after watching it a few times, I've learned to appreciate it. Whereas the reverse, like The Witch, I loved it immediately, and I rewatch it because I just look for different continuity things in films like that. I think Suspiria is something that it's almost like a required taste because of the way the stylistics of it. It's very different, and I would say that if you are someone who is open to differences and seeing this sort of not dark, gritty version versus this is more technicolor in the way their approach to horror. And I think to me, it's like once like I said, I watched it a few times, I learned to appreciate it. And now I start to look at different angles and I pick certain, like the scene where she's running, Pat is running through the woods and you see sort of like a shadow and stuff. Like I didn't catch that. And now I've watched it 3 times. So there's little things you can take out of it. But yeah, I'm definitely more of the Witch fan because again, I'm a huge fan of like the Crucible. I just think there's something about that time and period in time, which in itself is very dark. And so yeah, that's me.
And myself, to me, they're like two sides of a coin. You have your fairy tale witches, and then you have your folktale witches. And personally, I appreciate The Witch, and I think it's one of those films that should be seen and should be appreciated. But for me, it's got to be Suspiria. Suspiria, it starts out and it basically assaults your ears, it assaults your eyes. And from the very, even before the credits even start, you get the narration done by Dario Argento about the story of Susie Banyan. And then she goes, it starts from the airport with the sound, and all of a sudden that, the music, the Goblin score, the way it's filmed, everything about it. And even the murders are so well orchestrated that I can never get tired of it. Every time I see it, it feels like a new film to me. Where The Witch, I do watch it and I do understand it and I do like it, but I have to be in the right mood for it. But Suspiria you can put on at any time, and it just draws me in from that opening chord and just carries me all the way through to the very end. And nothing's better than hearing Witch through all any song. So as we go, what we're going to do is John's going to give us our end credits and discuss what's coming up next month.
So the blood moon has risen and our spell has been cast, but we couldn't have done it without our special hosts, Tristan Drew Rogers and Robert Kirby. Gentlemen, can each of you please tell us our witch and warlock listeners where they can find you on the interweb? Let's start with you, Tristan.
You can find me online at Tristan Drew. Drew is spelled Drue. So tristandrew.wordpress.com, and anywhere online books are sold for my novel Brothers of Blood. Thank you.
Wonderful. And Robert?
And you can find me on my website, Rob Kirby Comics, ROBKIRBY.com. And my handle on Twitter is Rob Kirby Comics. And my Instagram address is, you guessed it, Rob Kirby Comics. So
I'm sure by now you are all compelled to head on over to our website at llpodcast.com to find all of our past episodes, check out our social and podcast platforms, as well as become a patron and read our reviews of books to screens and everything in between. Don't forget to sign up to our monthly newsletter as well, where you can win one of our amazing limited Season 1 t-shirts. A special shout out to PowerCast97.com, internet radio station where we have a replay episode on Wednesdays at 3 p.m., as well as they host other podcasters like ourselves. You can check them out at PowerCast979.com. Speaking of being entertained, Seat Giant, as Keith had said before, has everything you can think of. And if you enter our promo code, and I think it's LL Podcast, right, Keith?
Yes, it
LL
is.
Podcast, you can get 20% off. I mean, that's scary, sweet deal, right? So in our next episode, we will be finishing the theme of the month, Must Be the Season of the Witch, with Alfred Hitchcock's The Bird. Thank you for downloading, sharing, and liking the Literary License Podcast. We hope you all have a mischievously magical day. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. See you guys next week.
Bye.
'Twas I what stole him. I be the witch of the wood.
Liar, liar.
I am.
Listen not to her, Mercy.
I am that very witch. When I sleep, my spirit slips away from my body and dances naked with the devil. That's how I signed his book.
No.
He bade me bring him an unbaptized babe. So I stole Sam and I gave him to my master. And I'll make any man or thing else vanish I like.
No.
Aye. And I'll banish thee too if thou displeaseth me.
Be quiet. Mercy, she's been telling fantasies.
Perchance I'll boil and bake thee, since we're a lack of food.
Stop, Thomasin. It's not true.
It is, thou thing. How I crave to sink my teeth into thy pink flesh. If ever thou tellest thy mother of this, I'll witch thee and thy mother, and Joan it too. Stop thy tears and swear thy silence.
I swear.
You'll not tell mother nor father.
I swear.
Wake up.
Good morning, dear. It's your early morning call.
You must wake up.
Wake up, man.
Wake up, child. Pay attention.
Come on. Wake up.
Wake up, love.
It should make the night, but see your little lights alive. Can you not see that little light up there? Where? There. Where? You're still in bed. Wake up, Sleepyhead.
Don't you know you've kept him waiting?
Look who's here to see you.
You won't beg. You won't beg.
Into this wilderness to find, leaving our country, kindred, our fathers' houses. We travailed a vast ocean. For what? For what? Was it not for the pure and faithful dispensation of the Gospels? And the kingdom of God, 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 and the kingdom of God.